On today's video, we're going to be learning about the top 10 most diverse cities in the United States. But before we get into the video, let's learn a little bit about diversity and how it affects a place. Now, the most diverse place that I've ever been to is Toronto, Canada, where 3 million people live. It is in fact the most diverse city in the entire world, and it is also one of the safest cities in the entire world. To give you an idea, with 3 million people, Toronto saw 85 homicides in 2021. In comparison, in 2024, Birmingham, Alabama, with just 200,000 people, has had over 154 homicides. So the notion that diversity creates dangerous communities isn't provable analytically. It's an opinion, but it's not an opinion based on facts. There is an analytical correlation between the least diverse cities in the United States and the highest homicide rates, those being cities like Birmingham, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Montgomery, Alabama. The cities that have the least diversity also have the highest homicide rates. And the cities that have the most diversity are the cities in the United States with the lowest homicide rates. And that pattern carries on into places like Canada, where we see Toronto, the most diverse city in the world, also being one of the safest places in the world. The only exception being Oakland, California, which is a diverse city that is extraordinarily dangerous. And on the other end, you have a few cities like Boise, Idaho that are devoid of diversity, but they're very safe. But overall, the general trend is that the cities that have the least diversity also have the worst homicide rates. This is a correlation that's unmistakable in analytics. Take, for example, the area that I live in, the Bradenton and Sarasota metropolitan area. It's a very diverse area, and it's also a very nice and safe area to live. The diversity here means that we have tourists from all over the world as well, and we're able to enjoy types of cuisine and food that perhaps you wouldn't find in a city that doesn't have this diversity. It makes life richer and more enjoyable for people who live in diverse places. Living in a diverse city gives you the opportunity to learn about other people's music, food, and culture. And the great thing is that today in the United States, some of the most up-and-coming suburbs, the best areas of large cities, are actually becoming the most diverse, which means that living in a diverse neighborhood in the year 2025 also means that while you enjoy the arts and culture, you're also living in a safe and desirable area. This is mostly due that diversity growth in the United States recently has been driven by wealthy people bringing their capital to the United States. And this is exactly how Toronto, Canada became the great city that it is today. To understand today's video, we're going to be using a race map. This is Jacksonville, Florida. You can see that on the north side of the city, you have a black area. That's going to be green. The white people are represented by blue, Hispanic by orange, and Asian by red. We can see that Jacksonville, Florida, on the east side of that river, you're starting to see kind of a mixed, diverse area. That area is actually a fast-growing suburban area, one of the most attractive parts of the city to live in, other than, of course, the beaches themselves. Many years ago, this area was entirely white middle-class people, but today it's becoming diverse with a growing Asian and Cuban community. Another great city that's seeing this effect is Nashville, one of the best cities to live in the United States. You can see that on the southeast side of Nashville, you're starting to see a suburban area that's becoming very diverse. The country music capital of the United States is also becoming a popular and safe place for Latino communities. Predominantly Venezuelans, Colombians, and Cubans and Puerto Ricans to a smaller degree. I recently had an Uber passenger here in Sarasota who moved here from Nashville, and she told me that she enjoyed living in Nashville because of the popping Latino dance scene, which you would think that Nashville would be a great place for country music, but the growth of Nashville has also attracted people from many different ethnicities and backgrounds, and it's becoming an even more cultured city today. I asked this passenger if she found Sarasota, where we live, more welcoming to Hispanics than Nashville, and she actually said that the elite people on the islands treat her with a degrading attitude, where back in Nashville, the country people treated her better. Thus, for this particular person, it seems that Nashville is even more welcoming than Sarasota. So if I feel very comfortable here in Sarasota, based off her experience, we could assume that Nashville would seem even better for a Latino. That probably wouldn't be the same experience for people in other parts of Tennessee, but Nashville is an expensive, growing, and very nice city that has become very diverse. And in that diversity, it's created a great, safe city. But Nashville's homicide rate is 16 per 100,000, making it 3 times more dangerous than New York and half as dangerous as Los Angeles. So what about the least diverse places in the United States? A recent study says that Clarksburg, West Virginia is the least diverse place in the United States. Me and my wife Katie recently went there and we recorded this footage. People in this town were really upset that their town was named the least diverse city in the United States. And a lot of people that live in this area are now inviting people from all over the country to move here. While some people thanked us for visiting their town, other people from here were not as welcoming. Take a look at this particular comment. This person said that if I go to his town, they'll literally put me in the freaking toilet. So not everybody here is friendly, and in fact, it's not a surprise that West Virginia leads the list of the cities that have the least diversity in the country. I've highlighted the cities that I've personally visited in West Virginia. So as somebody who's been to the least diverse places in the United States and the most diverse city in the world, that gives me a pretty good foundation to create today's video. So while Clarksburg is a beautiful town, I did notice that some people were very welcoming, but a lot of people here were outright disrespectful in the comment section. In fact, the video got a 72% like rate, which is extraordinarily low for our channel. And because of our subscriber, Will, who has been helping me and guiding me through West Virginia since he's from there, I actually took it pretty easy on Clarksburg since I didn't want to offend my friend who's from here. So imagine the comments I would have got if I had been somewhat offensive. If you look straight ahead, you'll see there's almost nobody on the streets of Clarksburg. Now, Clarksburg having the least diversity of anywhere in the United States means that these people are really isolated, and sometimes that creates an almost delusional mindset. Take a look at this comment on my Clarksburg video. This person says that the black people that live here, the very few black people that live here, are so wealthy, I have no idea how much money they have. However, the most expensive house in Clarksburg right now in the whole city is only worth $438,000. In comparison, the most expensive house in Sarasota, where I currently live, is at over $28 million. Here's what $200,000 gets you in Sarasota. So of course, the people that live in these towns in West Virginia that are completely isolated with a very low foreign-born population, they're kind of in their own bubble, and to them, reality is distorted because they've never left this bubble to understand what's really out there. From their perspective, you read their comment. From their perspective, they have the richest black people in America, but a black person living in an absolute bad neighborhood here in Sarasota could actually have real estate that's worth more than the most expensive house in their entire town. But again, these are people that are from West Virginia, the state that has the least diversity. But to get going with today's video, these are the states that have the least diversity. None of these states are states you actually want to live in: Alabama, Mississippi, West Virginia. And these are the states that have the most foreign-born population: New Jersey, California, Florida, Texas, the states you actually want to live in. So now that we've gone over all this information, let's get into our list of the top 10 most diverse cities in the United States. The reason I made this introduction so long is because I don't want to read these comments from people saying diversity is bad, diversity is evil. But these are individuals, again, who live in small towns and they don't really understand the world that's out there. Number 10 is Dallas, Texas. Now, Dallas, Texas is a very diverse city. It has a lot of Hispanic, white, and black people within city limits and sprawling suburbs. Keep in mind that we're talking about metropolitan areas on today's video. in the Dallas metropolitan area on a race map looks very diverse. You have black in the south side of the city, the east and the west are Hispanic, and the north is white, and a lot of diversity mixed in with the white suburbs. But if you'll notice, it's actually somewhat segregated within the city. Sadly, Dallas's homicide rate is 3 times the national average, but the suburbs where most of the diversity is are very safe. It's the core of the city that continues to be Southern segregationist, and that's a really bad combination. Other large cities like Chicago have the same problem. Take a look at Chicago on a race map. It's completely segregated. Hispanic neighborhoods are purely Hispanic, black neighborhoods are purely black, and the outskirts are purely white. If you pay attention to today's video, you'll make the correlation between the cities that are segregated, that are very dangerous, and cities that flow better racially, demographically, are safer. Compare Chicago to Central Florida being much safer. You'll see how there's more whites and middle ground in the state of Florida, while Chicago is purely segregated. Then you get to a city like Birmingham, Alabama, that's even more segregated and more stark of a difference. The homicide there is 4 times higher than Chicago. Number 9, Las Vegas, Nevada, a city that has a little bit of something for everybody. Without a doubt, the most resounding cultural aspect of the city is Hispanic, and what could be more American than the Las Vegas Strip? This is an exciting city that offers not only a lot of fun things to do, great shopping, it really is a city like no other. As far as nightlife, it literally tops Nashville. And as far as the culture of the city, it reminded me a lot of Southwest Florida. It really has a very Latino, diverse vibe. It isn't just a Mexican culture here. There's actually a lot of Cubans in Las Vegas as well, a lot of Central Americans. So it isn't just one type of Hispanic in the Las Vegas area. There's Hispanics here from all over Latin America. And even though Las Vegas is desert and it's way back on the West Coast, I really felt at home here because there was so much familiar cultural antics of this place that I literally felt like I was back in Southwest Florida culturally. And the Las Vegas area has one of the largest Cuban populations on the West Coast, with thousands of Cubans living here, particularly in the southeast side of the city near Henderson. You get the incredible nightlife of Nashville plus the incredible culture of Texas, Florida, and California all combined into one place. Las Vegas really is a masterpiece of a cultural city. So if you like diversity and a fun place to live, you can't beat Las Vegas. Now it also has a lot of homeless population. The story goes a lot of people play all their money away and end up on the streets with absolutely nothing. The homeless aspect is persistent here, and a lot of those people came to Las Vegas, lost everything, and ended up on the streets with absolutely nothing. I don't know if you guys know this, but gambling is one of those things that brings a lot of people to homelessness. It isn't just the addicted, it isn't just the disabled. Gamblers are among the people that end up homeless analytically the most. A few of the homeless people that I've interviewed here in Florida, obviously, as soon as they get the money for the interview, run straight to the gambling pits. They seem to just gamble everything they have, and it actually brings a lot of people straight into the streets, and that's why Las Vegas has just a homeless population. The state of Nevada also has a lot of complex issues. It has the second highest foreign-born population of any state, higher than the state of Florida. A lot of people move here from other places, and for some reason or another, they struggle to get acclimated to life in the United States. They think it's a big party, a gamble, a place to just party a lot, but they don't realize that life in the United States is about work. I spent most of my time in Las Vegas fascinated with the hoods. I spent very little time in the suburbs to see the nicer parts. I've heard there's a lot of nice suburbs like Henderson that have a lot of Hispanic communities. But unfortunately, when I was in Las Vegas, I spent most of my time in the hood. I had no idea that I would actually need this information for a future video. So unfortunately, all you get of Las Vegas is videos of me driving around the hood. Not exactly the best representation, but Las Vegas isn't a safe city. It has extraordinarily high crime rates, a massive homeless population, and on top of that, it has increasingly become among the most dangerous cities on the West Coast. So not everything's going perfect in Las Vegas. After all, any city that constantly gets mentioned by a compa Sacra on his corridos doesn't sound like the type of place I want to live with my family. I gotta mention too that in Las Vegas, the Latinos throw some of the sickest block parties I've seen anywhere in America. Number 8 is San Diego, California. This city's homicide rate is less than half the national average, which is an incredible accomplishment for a large city like this. San Diego also has some of the safest suburbs in America. It's a very diverse city, and in my personal opinion, it could literally be the best place to live in the United States, if not the most beautiful city in the country, other than this palm tree that might have got hit by lightning or something. If you want to talk about a city that's beautiful, diverse, and just amazing, it doesn't get any better than San Diego, California. Unfortunately, it is one of the most expensive cities to live in the United States. And of course, it's expensive. Who wouldn't want to live here? They have the perfect weather. They have a beautiful selection of restaurants. They don't exactly have the types of cuisine that I personally like, but I'm going to be honest, not my taste doesn't mean it isn't good. There's a lot of diverse cuisines in San Diego, and they have freaking In-N-Outs. Best freaking drive-thru place in America other than Jack's American Family Restaurant in Alabama. But who wants to eat freaking junk food? Anyways, if you like junk food, even their junk food is amazing in California. Interestingly, if you want even more culture, all you have to do is cross the border into Tijuana, Mexico, where your chances of being murdered are 50 times higher. Now, San Diego, California is actually on par with Toronto for safety. It is literally one of the safest large cities in the country. And what's interesting is on the other side of the border is, well, Tijuana, one of the most dangerous cities in the world, where you're 50 times more likely to be murdered than San Diego, which is interesting. It's like you can be in Toronto safety levels on the U.S. side, and then you cross the border into Mexico, and you're in Tijuana, where you have Birmingham, Alabama levels of violence. And yes, I did just make the comparison between Tijuana and Birmingham. Their homicide rates are almost identical, just like San Diego and Toronto's. But it's an interesting thing to know that just a simple wall separates the safest city in the United States from the most dangerous city in the world. And just so you understand how safe San Diego is, this neighborhood that we're in right now is called El Cajon, which literally means in Spanish, the box, is actually one of the most dangerous parts of San Diego, even though it literally looks like a rich area here in Sarasota, Florida. That should just give you an idea of how nice the city is. So the notion that places that are diverse are horrible, not exactly true. This is Pacific Beach. It's actually part of San Diego. The only complaint that I would really have about San Diego is that I thought their Mexican food was way too spicy. Has anybody ever noticed that this part of California has like the spiciest Mexican food ever? I love Mexican food, but if it's this spicy, I can't touch it. Anybody who tells you that diversity makes dangerous places has clearly never been to San Diego, a beautiful, diverse city, which I would live in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity. Number 7 is the Buford Highway area northeast of Atlanta. I couldn't tell you it's a city because there's several cities. I couldn't tell you it's a county because there's several counties, but it's basically the area northeast of Atlanta along Buford Highway. Atlanta is dangerous, it's segregated, but this area just northeast of Atlanta is one of the most diverse regions in the country. I recently spent some time out there in Lawrenceburg. I explored some very diverse ethnic markets, and I can say I had a great time. This area has a large combination of people from all over the world. There's Hispanic, there's Asian, it's just anything you could think of exists here in this part of Atlanta. If you enjoy eating foods from literally every part of the world you could think of, there's literally no shortage here. And I'm not going to say Atlanta as a whole because Atlanta isn't diverse. Atlanta's not. But this part of Atlanta definitely is. And it's all different counties, different cities, so it's hard to put a title on it. But I don't want to slap Atlanta on it because really it isn't Atlanta. It's just a large suburban area to the north of Atlanta. They call Atlanta the city in the forest, and it's very spread out. To label Atlanta diverse would be very misleading. That's why today we're just going to go with Buford Highway. Number 6 is the South Florida metropolitan area, which consists of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, but all of South Florida is very diverse. For a fact, Fort Lauderdale, particularly Broward County suburbs like Coral Springs, sit at the heart of the most diverse areas in all of Florida. Along the coast, you got Russians, Brazilians, Chileans, Argentinians, a lot of money from South America along the coast. You go a little further inland, you got Haitians, you got Cubans, you have just everything you could think of. A lot of French, a lot of European. It really is a lively city. And let's not forget that during the winter, the snowbirds come down from all over the United States. So the white population itself is very diverse as well, being from different parts of the country. The state of Florida is one of those states that has the most foreign-born population and one of the lowest percentages of people who are native-born population. Just about everybody in South Florida came from somewhere else, another country or another state. So if you like diversity, you're going to find it in South Florida. Without a doubt, in this metropolitan area, the further south you go, you're going to run into more Cuban population. And of course, Cuban is probably the biggest cultural influence in South Florida. But you get a little bit of Trinidad, a little bit of Puerto Rico, a little bit of the Dominican Republic, a little bit of Haiti, a little bit of Jamaica. If it's Caribbean, you'll find it in Florida. Number 5 is Los Angeles, California. Overwhelmingly Hispanic. There's even an area called Welcome to Florida. This is Downey, right outside of Los Angeles. I have to say, though, Los Angeles, while being very diverse, seems overwhelmingly Hispanic and overwhelmingly segregated. For the sake of crime analytics, Los Angeles is not as bad as people put it out to be. It's about twice the national average, maybe a little bit less than that on homicide rate, which honestly isn't that bad for a large city. You never hear anybody talk bad about Louisville. Louisville is at least 2 times more dangerous than Los Angeles. Cincinnati is 3 times more dangerous. Cleveland, Ohio is 4 times more dangerous. Birmingham, Alabama is 8 times more dangerous. So Los Angeles really by homicide rate isn't that dangerous of a city. I know it gets a bad reputation, but really for a large city with a homicide rate of 10 per 100,000 isn't that bad. Los Angeles is a city that really is covered in cultural influence, like this alleyway here in East Los Angeles, which if you've seen the movie Born in East LA, this is the reason I went to this neighborhood. It's one of my favorite movies about an American that's born in the United States as a U.S. citizen, but because he's Mexican-American, he gets deported to Mexico. He doesn't even know Spanish. It's a hilarious movie. If you've never seen Born in East LA, I definitely recommend it. And I had to go to East LA while in Los Angeles, and it really felt like the most authentically Hispanic neighborhood I've ever been to, so I don't regret it. I didn't really see too much of the nicer side of LA. Again, it's one of those cities where I spent most of my time in the hood, though. Of course, there's also a huge Asian community in Los Angeles. In Long Beach, you got Cambodia Town, for example. On the west side of downtown, you got Koreatown. Just never-ending mix of diversity in the city. But I will have to say that Los Angeles, the areas that tourists go to, like Hollywood, Venice Beach, places that tourists go to, actually seem a lot more run down, full of homeless and crimey than some of the inner city neighborhoods. I actually drove around Compton at like 2 in the morning. I drove around, South Central. Like all the areas that were supposed to be bad were actually pretty okay, even late at night. And then the areas that are touristy, like Hollywood and Venice, were actually the most criminal-minded neighborhoods. So I feel like the reason that tourists get a bad reputation for Los Angeles is because the areas that tourists go to happen to be the worst. I was in Downey, for example. I spent one day in Los Angeles there, and I was in Downey, and I went shopping and stuff like that, and they say you can't wear certain colors in Los Angeles. I purposely put on every wrong color you're not supposed to wear in Los Angeles. Nobody looked at me. Now, when I was shopping inside of a store, there's these groups of what I would think were Pacific Islanders, and I kid you not, these guys were like 7 foot tall and about 3 foot wide, and there was like 4 of them covered in gang tattoos. These dudes look like they could fight indefinitely. So definitely you'll meet some very scary individuals on the streets of Los Angeles, but hey, if you respect them and stay out of their way, you should be all right. I don't know what island these Pacific Islanders were from, but they look like they could fight for days. I know Los Angeles gets a bad reputation, but it's definitely a dope city. The only thing that's really aggravating about Los Angeles is how bad the traffic is and how aggressive the drivers are during rush hour. I feel like some of these people are actually driving around in stolen cars because they drive like they don't care to crash their vehicle. they got to be going through the wrong neighborhood or in a stolen vehicle, because they drive like they simply do not care. So if you have a very nice vehicle, you got to be careful in Los Angeles, because there's people here that drive like they do not care about their car. It must be stolen. Number 4 is Central Florida, which is basically Tampa and Orlando, with Polk County in the middle, tied for diversity. This is a large area, the I-4 corridor, very diverse from Tampa all the way up to Orlando. These people here were giving food to the homeless. Very good thing of them to do. Notice how they get out and talk to the people. They're not afraid of the homeless people. If you're helping them and giving them food, they're going to be very nice and courteous to you. They're not going to hurt you if you're trying to help them. This is a suburb called Alafaya, which is a suburb of Orlando, extraordinarily diverse. Now, Central Florida now has more Puerto Ricans than South Florida has Cubans. Puerto Ricans are U.S.-born citizens, every last one of them. Of course, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, so every Puerto Rican is born a U.S. citizen. Cubans are no longer the largest foreign-born group in Florida. Puerto Ricans have actually overtaken Cubans. There are now over 1 million Puerto Ricans in Florida, with more Puerto Ricans in the state than Cubans, most of them being in the central part of the state. It isn't just urban areas. There's Latinos all over rural North Central Florida. Polk County is a rural county covered in Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans. Tampa, Orlando, Polk County, this whole area is extraordinarily diverse. It would be hard to narrow it down into one city, and it would be a hard argument to make whether Orlando or Tampa is more Hispanic or diverse than the other. Both of these cities are very diverse, and for our number 4 position, I have to admit that there's nowhere else in America where you're going to see as much diversity as you will here. There really wouldn't be enough time on today's video to go over how much diversity there is in this area, but Orlando has a lot of Puerto Ricans. It's followed by Brazilians. Tampa has Cubans and Puerto Ricans and a lot of Mexicans, as well as a lot of Haitians. Right outside of Tampa, you got Bradenton and Sarasota. Sarasota has Amish. Sarasota has European, Ukrainian, Russian, lots of Europeans in Sarasota. Bradenton attracts a lot of people from the Midwest, so even though Bradenton's predominantly white, you gotta consider that there's white people from all over the country. Cubans are starting to move into Bradenton from South Florida. It's becoming more diverse. When you get to the outskirts of Tampa, Ruskin, Palmetto, these areas are about 1/3 split between the main groups. Orlando hosts the Florida Classic, which is the largest gathering of African Americans in the United States. It's a big football event. I've been there before, not for the football, but for the car culture and the music and a lot of the food scene that goes on. Take a look at this food truck. It's got the flag of Trinidad. Trinidad's known for soca music, calypso music. They're huge on music. Their food's pretty good. I had Trinidadian food when I lived in Alabama, in Alex City, Alabama. There's a Trinidadian restaurant. It's kind of like Chinese meets Indian meets Caribbean. It's an incredible fusion of foods. Yo, and a big salute to everybody in Trinidad. You guys watch my videos more than anywhere else outside the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So salutes to everybody in Trinidad. Much love, Trini. Even the rural areas like Polk County, Zephyrhills, areas that many years ago were predominantly white, today are becoming very diverse. The outskirts and suburbs of Tampa and Orlando keep expanding, which means most of the I-4 corridor today is very diverse. And what's nice is that these are rural communities. You know, with racism in the United States, you're not going to find too many rural areas that are this diverse. Unfortunately, it's mostly revolving around Hispanics. It would be nice to see more Asians and other people join the diversity out here, but there's a long way to go. Florida still has a horrendous reputation in general. So while a lot of strides have been made, there's still a long way to go in the state of Florida. A lot of the local people here fought back hard for these rural areas to change demographically. And even to this day, there's still a few people left who haven't moved to Alabama yet. But with your love and support, hopefully they will move to Alabama soon, where they belong, and we can just take over this whole freaking thing. I want Cuban food trucks, Puerto Rican food trucks, Haitian food trucks, Trinidadian. I want to see a dang Bahamian food truck out there. I know there's some redneck in Nebraska right now signing off for the video. Like, I've heard enough of this guy already. I'm done. I love how, like, all of a sudden rednecks became sensitive. You used to be like, you'd tell a redneck anything you wanted, and they'd be like, that's all right. I don't really care, man. Express yourself. Rednecks today are like, you hurt my feelings. When did rednecks become a bunch of crybabies? Number 3 is Houston, Texas. Look at this diversity map. At least for concentration of diversity, there's nothing in the United States that even comes close to Houston. Houston is a beautiful city. It's a large city and it's extraordinarily diverse. It offers a few neighborhoods, like, you have Mexican and black neighborhoods and white areas as well. It's got a little bit of everything. But once you start heading towards West Houston, then it's just absolutely the most diverse area you're ever going to see. And I know, like, there's 2 other places further on the list that are more diverse because they're bigger areas by population, so they win by default. But as far as like concentration of diversity, nothing even comes close. Houston's west side is just absolutely incredible. The area around Katy, Texas, it's so diverse you don't even know what language to speak. Now I speak Spanish, English, and enough Portuguese to communicate, and a little bit of Creole, this and that. And I went up to a car wash and literally I had no idea what language to begin with. Turns out that the person was like Chilean or Uruguayan or some South American person and were able to speak Spanish. But it is definitely extraordinarily diverse here to the point where you don't even know what language to speak. Very similar to the situation in Toronto. Now, this is a nice suburban area. Sure, there's lots of bad neighborhoods in Houston. We're not going to deny that. But when you get into the western part of town, these are nice suburbs. Sugar Land, Katy. These are types of places that are diverse, safe, and desirable places to live. Here's a Salvadorian, Ukrainian-looking pregnant lady, and she's about to give birth to a black, Cambodian, Japanese kid or something. You know what I'm saying? It's like very diverse. Baby's gonna come out looking like a Filipino Paul Wall. Houston is so diverse, it's confusing at times. And it's a type of city where you got bad areas and you got good areas, so just choose wisely.
Houston, Texas, H-Town, baby. Represent for the South and the South Side. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Driving in a 93 Lexus to the great state of Texas. My Buick so old when I drive through the hood, you can hear my exhaust manifold.
Number 2 is the Bay Area. San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, lots of diversity there. Even as far out as Sacramento, this is a very diverse area. There's a lot to see here culturally, and the diversity contributes to the culture of San Francisco. Now, because the person who ran for president was a DA over here in this part of the country, there's been like a defamation campaign to paint San Francisco and this part of California as the most horrendous place in the country. But I'm here to tell you that the truth is that San Francisco is actually one of the nicest, safest cities in the country. In fact, the homicide rate here is below the national average, which is impressive for a large city. And as well as the fact that, well, it's just a sack of lies. The homeless population here isn't as bad as they say. It's actually a lot worse in other cities that don't get the same reputation. When I think about cities with a lot of homelessness, I actually think about cities like Albuquerque, New Mexico, Denver, Colorado, but nobody's talking about that. San Francisco is an incredible city. They have probably the largest Chinatown in North America, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was in Montreal, Canada, where I saw another huge Chinatown, but I don't think it comes even close to San Francisco. It really is an incredible city. It has safety. It has some of the highest incomes of anywhere, highest real estate values for a reason. It's like when you look at San Francisco, the most expensive metropolitan area in the country, and San Jose, the most expensive city in the country. Have you ever wondered why it's so expensive? Maybe it's because they have the best jobs, the best safety. There's a reason why San Francisco, San Jose, the Bay Area is so expensive. And that reason is because it's worth living there. Now, I know if you live somewhere else in the country, you've been believing the whole defamation campaign that they put out there about this area, but it's all a sack of lies. I live in Florida. I Uber drive in Sarasota, and I get a lot of people that live in San Francisco. Some of them live in California and in Florida, or they go back and forth. And everybody tells me the same thing. Like, hey, I don't know what you've heard on the news. I'd rather live over there. It's better climate, it's safer, there's more job opportunities. They tell me when they moved to Florida that their income. I recently had somebody tell me that their income in Florida was a quarter of what it was in California. And yes, taxes in California are very high, and people do find ways around that, like being self employed. Not going to elaborate into that whole situation, but yeah, I mean, if there are people that find ways around the high taxes of California. Regardless, it's a great state to live, it's very diverse, and unfortunately, they've tried to taint the reputation of San Francisco as this horrendous place that it really isn't. Predominantly, the largest groups are here are going to be Asian. Chinese in particular seems to be the largest, but there's just everything you can think of in this metropolitan area, and it expands into rural communities, suburbs, and other adjacent cities. It's just this whole region of the country is very diverse. It's a beautiful and iconic city, and it's a shame that so many people are missing out on it because of the political rhetoric that they're being shoved down their throats. And perhaps if they saw San Francisco for themselves, it might change the way they look at the world, because when you go to the city, you see the incomes, you see the cost of real estate. Even I walked around the Tenderloin, and yes, I went to Oakland as well, and it just didn't seem that bad. It seemed like any city this size is going to have bad neighborhoods, Oakland. And I walked around the Tenderloin where there's supposed to be a bunch of homeless people, and it didn't even look that bad. There isn't crap on the streets of San Francisco. There aren't needles on the streets. That's all a sack of lies. There's actually more of that here in Florida where I live, but I'm the only YouTuber covering that situation. As you guys know, the overdose death rate in Florida is 1.4 times higher than California, so it's a lot worse over here in Florida. But again, everything today is a political narrative, and it's really sad that just a beautiful city like San Francisco, a lot of people are not going here. When I went to San Francisco the first time, I was actually afraid because everything I had heard. And then I went there and I was like, wait a minute. I've been all over America. I know what a bad place looks like. The analytics don't show it. The reality doesn't show it. It's a completely false narrative, and it sucks. It's just a great diverse city is being portrayed as horrendous. But again, that's that racist narrative of demonizing minority communities and making everybody think, even us minorities ourselves, believe this crap, to the point where when I went to San Francisco, I was expecting a complete crap hole, and then I realized it's possibly one of the most beautiful cities in the country, and that everything that I was told was lies. I had to open up my eyes, because even I myself had just heard these lies repeated so much that even I believed it. San Francisco is a beautiful, safe city, and despite what you've heard, it's a great place to live. And it's very expensive. Your salary in the South cannot correlate with the cost of living here. Keep in mind, you have a lot of Asians, very well-educated people, so the standards for education here and for competitive workplace are very high. So if you're completely illiterate from South, you wouldn't make it here. Number one is New York City. It shouldn't come as a surprise that the bridge is over, and we know what the most diverse city is in the United States. Everybody should have kind of known this one. It's pretty obvious. New York City represents almost every single country in the world in some way or another. But it's interesting. Literally every nationality in the world has a neighborhood represented in New York City. And while I know overall Toronto is more diverse, but if you think about it, New York really is another capital of diversity, which these nationalities all represent. Also trade internationally with all of these countries. So it's a great thing for the economy of the United States that we have a city that has people from every country in the world, because that facilitates trade into the United States of products from every single country. At least that's the way I look at New York City. If you live here and you have a different way of describing it, I would love to hear it. Another city that gets a horrible reputation because of politics, New York City's homicide rate is less than the national average. That's fairly impressive. Literally, there are cameras everywhere. Just so you know, in this little stretch of road here, there's a camera, and I went a few miles over the speed limit, and I got a ticket in the mail. New York City has so many cameras, you can't even speed through the city. What I don't like about New York City is that it's not a car city. It's not that it's dangerous. It's not that there's migrant gangs like all these YouTubers are saying. That's a load of crap, okay? Everybody in New York City is a migrant. Who the crap isn't? It's the most diverse city in the country. The thing about New York City is not that it's dangerous. It's just the configuration of it. Very high population density. And there's a lot of really rude people. I guess in a place this big, you'll never see another face twice. So you got people that just are very disrespectful while driving. And I guess they might have these things called ghost license plates where they're not really real license plates. So they don't care about the speeding cameras and they just drive around like they're nuts. I don't know what gives them the authority to do that or if the cops see them if they get busted. But at the end of the day, New York City is a very chaotic place. And it's a very cool city to go to. I don't know if I could tolerate living here, because I do like driving vehicles. I like driving large vehicles at that. I'm just not a fan of the high population density. There's a few parts in New York City that are less population density and feel a little bit normal, but finding a parking space here is a nightmare. Again, I like driving large American cars, so a city like New York City just isn't my thing for day-to-day living. But nonetheless, it is an incredible city packed with culture in every section. And it's possibly one of the best food cities in the country. Food is very expensive. Eating out is expensive. Parking is expensive. It's just money flows out of your pocket in New York City at a rate that is unmatched with anything. From parking, the tickets, just everywhere you go, you're being leached out of your money. I can understand why people don't want to live here. It isn't the diversity that makes New York City horrible. It's the fact that it's a large city that's trying to suck every dollar out of your pocket. In some parts of New York City, there's a lot of resentment at the Asian community moving in and buying up neighborhoods like in Brooklyn, but nobody forced you to sell your property. You sold your property because they offered you a lot of money. A lot of these Italians from New York and Brooklyn, they sold their houses to Asians and they moved to places like Staten Island or Connecticut or something. Now, they regret that they sold Brooklyn to Chinese people. You know what, dude? They paid you with US dollars. If you sold out your neighborhood and now you gotta live somewhere else and you don't like it, don't come to me crying about how the Chinese bought these houses. They didn't steal them, they bought them. You sold it, now it's not yours anymore. I'm so tired of these people crying about how, oh, it used to be all Italians, now it's a bunch of Chinese people, where's New York? It ought to be Italian, Or then why the crap did you sell it? It's like everywhere I went in the New York area, all I heard was Italians complaining about how the Chinese people bought everything and now we can't live there anymore. Well, did they force you to sell it or did you decide to sell it? Because if you sold it and they bought it with US dollars, you're lost. And this is the stupidity of a lot of people. A lot of people sold their neighborhoods to other nationalities and now they're crying because they don't have a slice in New York City. Well, nobody forced you to sell it. Well, they had cash money. They had a lot of money and they bought it all out. And a lot of people don't understand about places like San Francisco and New York City, and even other cities like Miami, for example, is that people from other countries have a lot of money and they use that money to buy real estate. And they're willing to pay all types of money that people here in the United States simply don't have. Americans are under the impression that they're the only people who have power of acquisition. And it is so wrong. There's power of acquisition throughout the entire of the world. In fact, in America is the only country in the world where people are indebted to their freaking eyeballs. In other countries, people don't get bank loans, so they own the houses. They don't have car loans, they own the cars. The average net worth in Haiti is probably higher than the average net worth in America, because in America, everybody is indebted to their eyeballs, and in Haiti, if they have a bicycle, it's paid off. But a lot of people in the United States are upset because they feel that as Americans, they should be the richest people in the world. And that's not true. Every country in the world has rich people. Every country in the world has millionaires. But not every country in the world is sucking the life out of every single person. Property taxes, income taxes, fines, tickets. You have to renew your driver's license. You have to pay taxes on a house that you've already bought. You got to pay taxes when you make the money, pay taxes when you buy something, and then pay taxes to keep it. You're getting taxed 3 times on the things you buy in this country. And people think that in a country where your life and money is being sucked out of you every single day, that this country really has the highest standard of living. And here comes somebody from China with $5 million and buys your house from you and then you cry about, oh, they took over my neighborhood. No, stupid, they bought it. What the United States offers is the best platform for business. It offers the best platform to make money from, and it takes money to make money. So if you have money, you bring it to the United States and then you can make more money. But a lot of people in the United States don't understand that. They think the United States has the highest standard of living, and it doesn't. If it did, it would have the highest life expectancy, and it doesn't. If the United States really was the best place to live, it would have the safest cities, and it doesn't. The United States is the only advanced country in the world with crime analytics among the most dangerous countries. Literally, Mexico, Brazil, the United States. Why is the United States among the most dangerous countries in the world if it has a high standard of living? Violence is never related to high standards of living. But people here really think this is the greatest place in the world, and they don't understand really that it's the best platform to make money in the world. But that's for people who are very industrious. The moment you break your back, become disabled, or don't have $200,000 to invest, you're no longer in a position to take advantage of what the United States actually offers, a good platform to make more money, at which point you just become a slave to the system. That's diversity in the United States.